All right, our next guest, he can drive, he can park, and like a lot of us guys in our 40s, he's now in the parent pickup line more than he's on the Sunset Strip and at the nightclub. Movie star, podcaster, Beach Bowl MVP, big Knick fan, my man Jerry Ferrara. What's up, Jerry?
The fact that you threw in my Beach Bowl MVP award really tells me something and makes me really smile. Thank you so much. And yeah, I just dropped my kids off at their first day of school, so the Escalade is filled with a lot of different passengers these days.
I figure Matt can't be the only one with the hardware on the show. You know, you got your own hardware.
Oh, don't kid yourself, though. Matt Leinart displays his Heisman in our new show quite often, and I will bust out my Beach Bowl MVP award for him.
Yeah, you better put that right behind you because that's just as impressive if you ask me. The new show is called Throwbacks, and it's hosted by our guest here, Jerry Ferrara, and his good buddy Matt Leinart. A throwback for me personally, Jerry, is I was a young reporter at ESPN Radio. It was 2004. I was on the field for that USC game. It was in Miami. It was Leinart. It was Pete Carroll. It was Reggie Bush, and they rolled over Adrian Peterson in Oklahoma. You remember that game?
Oh, I do. You know, it's really interesting with Matt and I's careers. You know, Matt was doing all that at a very similar time that Entourage was just starting for me, and we were both kind of in the LA scene running around. We weren't friends back then. We could have easily been friends back then. But, yeah, of course I remember. I mean, to me, that USC team, whether you think they're the best team of all time or not, like that's obviously disputable, but that's one of the most iconic college football teams I've ever seen.
And there was a lot of hype around that team. I actually remember when I was on the sidelines, I got big-timed by one of the big stars. Will Ferrell actually big-timed me. I went up to him to try to, get a couple questions in. New reporter at ESPN. He was hanging out with the USC cheerleaders, and he completely big-timed me.
He basically gave you the Heisman.
Oh, yeah, huh? He sure did. Will Ferrell was not answering any questions from my little punk ass. I'm curious, you had to cross paths in Hollywood with a lot of these big-timers. Have you ever been big-timed, Jerry?
I don't think I've been big-time, but I made a very early choice young into my career, and especially once I knew that we were going to have all these cameos on with Entourage and stuff like that and running around, I wasn't going to fanboy out as much as I would want to. Now, it's different for you when you're on the sideline because you're trying to get questions in. You're doing your job, right? You're trying to get some questions. But if I was on that sideline with Will Ferrell, yeah, I just act like I didn't know who he was.
And then he might want to talk to you.
Not really. Like, obviously I know who he was, but like, I really tried hard at a young age not to be like, oh my God, Will Ferrell, I love old school. I really tried hard not to do that thing, even though I wanted to do that thing. It was different for you because you're trying to get sound bites and ask questions and do your job. So no, I've never really been big time, but I also didn't put myself in position to get big time. I've been big time in the sense where some people have shown up like super late to things we were supposed to film, and yeah, I guess that's a form of big timing. So as far as like, hey, we're shooting this thing at 9 a.m. and someone shows up at 10, I guess that's a form of big time because I sat there for an hour and waited. But no, I've never been big time walking up to someone because I probably didn't walk up to them. And
in Hollywood time, an hour late, man, that's nothing, brother. I mean, come on, you know that. Our guest here,
that's nothing, but I like to finish work and go home. So and a lot of the crew members want to go home too. So let's get this going.
I remember on the show you guys are going to be talking, I know, with Matt, a lot of sports, a lot of entertainment, the two intersecting together, and I'm looking for the launch episode, the premiere coming up this Thursday. Everywhere you get your podcast, just search Jerry and Throwbacks with Matt Leinart. But I remember you guys on Entourage having a lot of sports athletes come on the show. I remember Tyson. I remember Russell Wilson was throwing the football with you in the movie. I remember LeBron even was on the show. Of all the athletes, who do you think had the best acting chops that you remember?
So, really good question because we have, for whatever reason, athletes resonated with the show more than actors to a degree. So it was a lot easier to get athletes on the show because they really wanted to be on. Look, Tom Brady was great. I'm not going to give him any more credit than he already needs because he's got plenty. We all love him. We get it. Brady was great. I liked the job Phil Mickelson did. He had a pretty heavy episode. Like, he was in the episode a lot, and I thought he carried it pretty well. There's a small scene, a quick one with Steve Nash, where he kind of runs into the E character, and they have this moment of, like, having girl problems. I thought that was pretty cool. And there's just been so many. Like Strahan did a good job. It's really hard to pick one, but if I had to pick one, I really like what Phil Mickelson did. But LeBron was great too in his one or two scenes.
I'm excited to hear you tell all these great stories with Matt Leinart on this new podcast called Throwbacks. And whenever I hear that word, throwbacks, I can't help, especially at this time, 04, 03, 05, when the show was just taking off. Everybody was sporting the throwback jerseys. Now, when I look in my closet, every jersey is throwback, Jerry, as we get older. But I have a Montana Notre Dame that I hold close to my heart, and also a 69 Ernie Banks. Were you ever collecting any of those throwback jerseys?
So for sure. And Gentry, what I love is that you are getting what we're going for with the name. Obviously Matt and I are kind of throwbacks. That USC team is a throwback. Entourage to a degree is a throwback. But for me, the throwback name, which everyone now knows in their own way, but it's everything. You could do on this day, this happened in sports. That's a throwback. The sneakers, the jerseys, that's a throwback. Also, you could just throw it back to someone all right, man, I'm going to throw it back to you. So the name for me, I thought was really good because we're not just going to have the Instagram page where it's just us talking about the pod. We're going to do a lot of this stuff. So for me, a lot of what Turtle early on with the jerseys and stuff was a lot of me. I wear that Bernard King jersey in the pilot. By the way, I took that jersey. I have that actual jersey that
wow.
I wore in the pilot, the Bernard King one. One of my favorites that I also took was I had the Kevin Garnett and the Tracy McGrady McDonald's All-American jerseys, which I think are fire, right? I had a Jeter from the World Baseball Classic jersey. So I am that guy. That is a huge part of my life. That's why I thought this name was fitting for Matt and I. And sneakers, forget it. I just bought the Bo Jackson Raider cross trainers. They just gave me blisters on my feet. But I'm a nostalgia guy at this point. That's really what you're saying when you're saying throwbacks, is you're saying nostalgia. And that always makes me feel warm and fuzzy whenever I can talk about something throwback.
Another throwback, actually, this is, I feel like, no offense to you, but you must have been throwing back a lot of fast food back in the early days, Turtle? he had a few pounds on him, but now something has happened. I'm curious, is this all the wrestling you did with Ronda Rousey? People want to know, how did you go from, a little chunky turtle to, the slim, trim ninja turtle looking guy? I mean, now you look like Donatello.
By the way, I was always a Michelangelo guy.
Okay.
Just saying.
Yeah.
I always was a Michelangelo guy. Still am. Look, it worked for me. I was always I don't want to say a bigger kid, but I come from a big Italian family in Brooklyn. We settled a lot of emotional issues with food. You had a bad day at school, have this meatball. And that's how we did it. So my relationship with food was always emotional like that. It worked for Entourage and the character all those years. It just worked. It wasn't ever a specific directive, hey, Turtle, the character Turtle needs to be overweight. It just was timing out. But once I got to 30 years old, it wasn't so much hey, I need to look better. It was I need to feel better. I'm only 5'6". I hit 200 pounds, pretty big dude. But for me, it wasn't. I did not do a crash diet. I didn't do some crazy workout. I know this is not the thing everybody wants to hear, but it was just a long, slow grind. I started eating a little better. I remember when I started working out, I could only walk 2 miles at 4 miles an hour on the treadmill, which is basically a brisk walk. That's all my body could handle. And you cut to a year or two later, I'm doing box jumps and I'm boxing in an octagon with Randy Couture. So you never know where it'll take you. And now it really is about health. I actually got to get back into it, though. But since having kids, I put on maybe 5 pounds or so because it's I'll finish your food, and that's what's happening. The workouts are not nearly as intense once you have kids. But I just felt a lot better. And I tell everyone, if you're on the fence about doing it, just do it. And don't think it's going to happen in a month. You got to look at it in the long term.
The new podcast with Matt Leinart and Jerry Ferrara, it launches this Thursday. It's called Throwbacks, with new episodes dropping every Thursday. Make sure you check it out. As you guys intersect this sports and entertainment, I know there are some comparisons to an actor and an athlete. You guys got to perform under the lights. You got to be prepared. I'm curious, what did a game day look like for you when it came to the show Power on Stars or Entourage on HBO? What did preparation look like for you, your playbook?
Well, Power was always a little different because, you know, it's a 1-hour drama. I'm playing a criminal defense attorney, so there was a lot of dialogue that I didn't even necessarily know what some of it meant because it was a lot of legal. So Power was a lot more studying and being ready and knowing exactly what it is you're saying because, like I said, it's a lot of dialogue. I just didn't know what it meant, some of it. With Entourage was a mood show to me. Like, you needed to have energy. You needed to have the right mood. So for me, and it actually is what Entourage became famous for, the music. I connected a lot of Entourage with music. So if I knew, hey, we're starting at 6 a.m, but we're shooting in the nightclub and it has to look like we're having the most fun ever, I just made sure I had that playlist ready to go for when I needed it because, you know, to me, Entourage was about the vibe.
Who do we credit for those soundtracks? Because I remember, like, this was before Shazam, but if it would have been around watching Entourage, I would have been Shazamming the shit out of that show. Who can we credit for that?
I think you've got to credit, Doug Ellen, number one, but then our music supervisor, Scott Venner, you know, if you look, and he's on social media, you can find him pretty easily. You know, he really got unbelievable songs early before they were popular or old school songs that people just loved hearing. And we became famous for that needle drop at the end credit. The songs we went out on, I think people have made Spotify lists on for years now.
All right, we're running out of time here with my man Jerry Ferrara. Check out his new podcast, Throwbacks. It launches this Thursday, but I want to do some quick fire Entourage questions. A lot of big fans listen to this show. The first question I want to ask you is, you guys were burning it down a lot. Speaking of getting in the mood for the show, a lot of bong rips, a lot of joints being passed around. What were you guys smoking?
Well, that is actually like this herbal tobacco that you use that kind of looks a lot like weed and burns like weed, but is not quite weed. So, yeah, I mean, a lot of people used to think we were really smoking on the show. It's like
not even one time, not even one hit.
I'm not saying that. All I'm saying is sometimes when you have like 15 pages of dialogue to do in one day, smoking up is not the best. We'll be there for a week. So it wasn't always the best like that way, you know?
All right, here's another question for you. What about the greatest location shoot for Entourage?
I always loved when, look, we shot courtside at a Laker game. Obviously, it was after Mr. O'Neal's run with the Lakers, but we used to shoot courtside at the Laker game, and I'm a huge basketball fan, so that was always the coolest for me.
And who was the furthest from their character in real life out of the main characters on Entourage?
You know, so I'm not trying to say me because it's me, but a lot of the guys have always said over the years it was me. You know, I think I'm a little more of a thinker. I don't let it fly just as easily as Turtle does with some of the things he says. So I'm going to say it's me.
And then these aren't Entourage questions. These are just more questions for you, Jerry. College or NFL football for you? You more of a Saturday or a Sunday guy?
NFL football for me because I grew up in New York City. There's no college football team, and I didn't go to a big-time school, so it's NFL for me.
And is that Jets or Giants?
Giants all the way, although I don't hate the Jets this year.
All right, and who is the greatest Knick of all time, in your opinion?
Well, in my era and generation, it's Patrick Ewing, but it is quickly becoming Jalen Brunson, and that makes me smile because the Knicks haven't had a point guard since I've been a fan. So it is fastly becoming Jalen Brunson. But for me, it's Patrick Ewing because I was a little too young for like the Frazier days, you know?
And then the fantasy football quarterback that you're riding with this season. And how many leagues are you in, by the way?
I'm in 3 leagues, and I'm all in on fantasy and even with some of my betting. Kyler Murray, all in. I think it's a big bounce back for Kyler. He was on a great path before he started getting the injuries. The team isn't great. I think it's a huge bounce back now that he also has Marvin Harrison Jr.
All right, Jerry, thanks for your time, man. I'm excited to listen to the new podcast. It's called Throwbacks, available wherever you get your podcast. It's dropping on Thursday and every Thursday. Jerry, thanks for your time, my brother, and take care of those kids, all right? Get back to work.
Great talk, Gentry. Yeah, this little guy just ran in here right now, but thank you for the talk. Good talk. I appreciate you.
Peace out, bro.
Take care.